So, delayed speech and autism. Most of the children who are on the spectrum will always hear that they also have delayed speech. So, what is the relationship? And does it mean that if a child has delayed speech, they are also likely going to be on the spectrum? Well, for this and many more, please stick around till the end of this video. If you're new here, this is Dr. Lema. So, 1 out of 10 children will experience delayed speech. And this has nothing to do with them being on the neurodiversity spectrum, all right? And for kids who are learning more than one language at a time, are also more likely to also have delayed speech because it takes a bit more time for the brain to be able to figure out one language at a time, be able to organize it, understand it to an extent that this child is actually able to speak. So what we usually advise is if for any reason at home you use more than one language, anytime you are using it in a sentence, make sure it is one language at a time in a sentence. Do not add, for example, if you're doing Swahili and English, do not speak a Swahili sentence and add an English word inside a Swahili sentence. All right, that's when it helps to help your child learn the 2 languages concurrently, and then it also helps them to be able to understand better, and also for their brain that is developing to be able to figure out things better. All right. So how does language develop? So there's usually a typical way of language development, and then there's usually the diverse way of language development. So for a typical way of language development, usually by the time a child has 5 months, and by this, when I mean typical, I mean children who are neurotypical, by the way, in terms of brain development, yeah? So by the time the child is 5 months, usually they'll start saying ooey. So you'll be able to know when they're happy, they'll be, saying these sounds. They're not so happy, they'll be able to say this, these sounds, we call them cooing sounds, and you'll be able to relate whatever they're saying with their facial expressions. And then by the time the child is 6 months to 1 year, they'll be, starting to babble, and you'll be able to pick a few syllables: mama, 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 dada, 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 kaka, kaka, kaka. So when this child says mama or dada or baba or kaka, they're not really calling anyone. For them, it's just the syllables just starting to form, and they're just enjoying how it feels from their mouth and what they hear actually coming from their body. Okay? Then when this child gets to 1 year, then this child is actually able to put names on things, so objects and people. So when they say mama at 1 year, chances are they're actually calling mama. When they say dada or auntie or brother, really depending with how much time these people spend with this child and how much these words are actually used in the house, those are the words that are more likely to be called first by this new child. All right. Then when they get to 2 years, then you start hearing them combining these words, the levels of objects and people, to verbs. So by the end of 2 years, they're able to do the 2-word phrases. For example, go toilet, want water, depending on the language that they are using. All right. When they get to 3 years, then it's the 3-word phrases. They start adding words like me, my, I into these phrases. I want toilet, I want water, I want, something like that. Okay. Then when they get to 4, 5, you find out that the sentences are becoming more and more rich, and the vocabulary is also increasing more and more. Now, for a child who is developing into a language with more on the diversity spectrum, we call it Gestalt language development. And for children who develop using the Gestalt language development, it's exactly the opposite of those who are developing the typical. So these children will, most of the time, they'll be quiet all these years up to the age of 4, 5. And then one day, out of the blue moon, they say a phrase: I want to go to the toilet, or give me the ball, or I love you. And you'll be wondering, how is it that they're able to say a full sentence and yet they're not even able to call you mama, or they're not able to call you baba or dada? Okay? So this is the difference. For a child who is having who is not developing typically, who is on the neurodiversity spectrum, language comes in phrases. And I did a video, it should be appearing here. You may go ahead and check it. So for these children, the most primitive form of language is in a phrase. Okay, so it is these different phrases that have been commonly used in the house. They've been able to attach this phrase to particular things or people or emotions, and whenever they speak of this phrase, they may not necessarily mean what that phrase means. They mean what that emotion, the emotion or the object or the person is attached to that phrase. So for example, they want to go play. They'll not say I want to go play. They'll say give me the ball. Okay, so And even if they don't, so you see, they'll say, give me the ball, meaning they want to go out to play the ball. Okay? Or they may say, give me the ball, meaning they want to go out and play with the friends. Okay? Because that's the most primitive form when it comes to Gestalt language. It's like the mama, baba, dada, or like the syllables, actually. Okay? When it comes to those who are developing typically. So as this Gestalt language development continues to mature, they trim these phrases, and the highest form of Gestalt language development is the single words that come into these phrases. So a child who has single words, who was on the neurodiversity spectrum, has the highest form of maturity as far as language is concerned. And these are the people who are able to pick one word, connect to another word for it to make a full sentence. But before that, they'll be speaking in phrases to mean a specific emotion, a specific activity, a specific person. Okay, so you have to be very keen for you to be able to understand what does this phrase mean now at this particular point in time, or how, if it is about an expression, how they feel, you need to be able to pick from that expression. For example, if they're in pain, they'll say they'll say head hurting. And it may not necessarily mean it's their head that is hurting, but it may mean that there's a part of their body that is hurting. Okay? And they say head hurting because the first time they heard that phrase, head hurting, someone was expressing themselves how they were feeling. So for them, that phrase is an expression of how they are feeling. So you really have to spend time with this child, be able to understand where they're coming from, so that you're also able to respond to this child appropriately. Okay, so you notice a child who's typical starts from words to a sentence. A child who's on the neurodiversity spectrum, for example, autism, they usually start from a sentence coming down into words. Okay, so how is this related? So from this, you come to appreciate the fact that is why most of the children who are on the spectrum, now we're talking about autism, they're more likely to have delayed speech because they will not go through this way. They are starting from the sentence. So for them, till when a full phrase or sentence is formed in their head, they will not speak anything. And that is if they are speaking, because we do know that 3 out of 10 children who are on the spectrum will never speak. Okay? So these remaining 7, if they are following the Gestalt language development, they'll just be quiet for 4 or 5 years. Then one day, after 5 years, they'll speak a whole sentence. Okay, and that has been a testimony. Like most parents, even for my own son, that's exactly what happened. All right. So now, for you as a parent who has noticed that my child has delayed speech, does that mean they have autism? Not necessarily. Okay. So delayed speech is not synonymous to autism. So if your child has delayed speech, this is the first thing. You'll notice that your child has the delayed speech at the age of 1 or 2 and they are just quiet. So whenever you notice at that particular time, the first thing that you need to do as a parent is zero screen. The recommendation is any child less than 2 years should not have any zero screen time. A child who's less than 2 years has nothing to do with the screen. That's what it means. Then when they get to 2 to 5, they should spend 1 hour on the screen per day. And this usually has to be co-viewing. That means it's an adult with them, so that whatever is happening there is also being explained for them to be able to understand. All right. Then from 5 to 17, a maximum of 2 hours in a day. These exclude for those who have to do homeworks, meetings and all those things depending on the age of the child. But when we're talking about screen time that we are limiting is the one that is of scrolling. You're just sitting there scrolling from one channel to another. It's just aimlessly. That's what we're talking about. Maximum of 2 hours in a day for 5 to 17 years old. So if you have a 3-4-year-old child who is not speaking yet, please, zero screen time. And one of the reasons is because we want these children to be able to hear as many words as possible, for them to be able, if it's to pick phrase or to pick words, because without hearing, there is no speaking. Okay, that's the first thing. Then the second thing is also what you need to know is, does your child hear all conversation and all conversation? Okay, because we have partial hearing, like mild hearing loss, where you find some words or some sounds not audible for children who have mild hearing loss. You'll find the vowels like a, e, o, u. For those who have mild hearing loss, they may not be able to really pick in a sentence. Okay, so you hear a person hearing a word with missing vowels. And of course, that's going to affect their language formation in the brain. So what we usually say is, the second thing is, take your child to be able to do a hearing test. Now, most of the parents, usually if I advise them to do this, they'll be like, but my child can hear the TV when it's on, I don't know, when the door bangs. It is true. Most likely it is true. However, if we are already experiencing speech delay, we cannot just assume simply because your child can hear the TV and all that, that your child can actually hear. All right, it's very important for you to be able to rule out any type of hearing loss. Okay, so that's the second thing, zero screen time. The second thing is, you'd go do a hearing test. Now, if your hearing test is fine and your child is actually attentive, then now we can start talking about being able to do speech therapy or being able to incorporate things. So what we usually say, the first thing is, you as a parent at home, you should be able to talk to this child as much as possible. I have an online course where we talk about how to talk to a child on the spectrum, and I should be able to post the link on the description box. If you're interested, you can go and check it out. Okay, but whenever you have a child with speech delay, when you're talking to this child, make sure you're doing this very slowly. Make sure you've grabbed the attention of this child. Okay, and maybe I should talk about attention. Not all children who are inattentive are also hyperactive. Okay, because some parents will tell them, is your child attentive? Do you think your child pays attention when you're talking to them? Because for them to be able to hear and understand and being able to respond, they should be able to attend to be attention to give you their attention to an extent. So if you're not sure of that, then you may need to work on their attention even before you start considering the speech therapy. Because if I talk to you and you're not listening, chances are you'll not hear and you'll not even understand what I'm saying. And of course, their response will be inappropriate. Okay? So that's also the other thing. So for what the activities that you can do at home to help you with inattentive things are things like beading, sorting. For example, you can do pink balls, red balls, white balls, and tell them to sort blue balls and pink balls and white balls separately. Beading is just, being able to focus and put a wire through a bead. Or you can even give them coloring. For example, if they are younger, you can give them colors and tell them to color just within the boundaries of a specific line. Okay? So those are the things that you may be able to do to your child to be able to increase their attention. But as you do all this, please make sure you go see your pediatrician who will be able to advise you on the best way forward. All right. The key thing is screen. I'm really insisting on this because a child born today will be exposed to the screen on day 0. Like before 1 hour has elapsed, this child has already come in contact with the screen because parents are busy on the screen, from taking photos to videos to doing video calls and all that. Okay. So automatically this affects the number of words we speak in a day, which also affects the number of words this child hears in a day, and of course their language development. And also because the screen is introduced early on, it also affects how the brain develops. So parents really need to be very, very intentional when it comes to finding other activities that can occupy our children's time, so that it's not the screen that replaces these different activities that we have to do every single day. All right. So that brings me to a close, and I hope you found this helpful. If you have any comment, please let me know. Have you ever experienced a delayed speech, and what are some of the things that worked out for you? And what did I say that resonated the most with you? Till then, bye bye and take care.